What you don't want to do is fall in love with that building on Main Street that you have the perfect passion for, because then you're going to get stuck and you're going to believe it can't happen. And all these old people think I'm their retirement plan and they won't sell me the buildings and nobody wants, just go and put all the fishnets out there and just see what you can reel in.
That is such good advice for every real estate investor in any deal. This is the Better Life Podcast, where we talk about real estate investing, building wealth, and all in all living a better life. My name is Brandon Turner, and I've spent my life investing in real estate to achieve financial freedom. And alongside my co-host, Mr. Cam Cathcart, we want to help you do the same. On the show, you're going to hear from world-class guests who have been handpicked to help you level up your investing, your leadership, your goals, your habits, and more to become the very best version of yourself. So join us as we explore the habits, the actions, the beliefs that it takes to build wealth through real estate investing without losing your soul. This is the Better Life Podcast with Brandon Turner and Cam. Haircut, Cathcart.
Cut the mullet off, baby.
Cut the mullet and the mustache. Now you just look like you're 12.
I look normal, and that's what I hate about it. Is I'm the most normal looking. I'm just
yeah, you're just a normal guy now.
Yeah.
Lexi finally got you to cut it and look normal.
Yeah.
Well, the hair looks good. Even you got a hat on today. It does look good. See, look at this. You look like a preacher or something, like a cool preacher.
A cool preacher.
Yeah, do you have sneakers on?
I do. I have Yeezys.
Oh, look at
Can you
those.
get these in the camera?
I don't. I think you
Those
got
are
them.
Yeezys, baby.
Yeezys.
They're fake. I got them.
China.
No, I got them in Africa for I think $12.
Wow,
and so they're very fake, but
it's okay.
From far away, people don't know. They just think those are really expensive shoes.
Oh, well, speaking of fake, today's episode is not fake. We have a real investor coming on to the show today. Katie Neason is one of my favorite people in the world. She's going to be sharing about redevelopment. Now, that might be kind of crazy to you, but it's basically the idea of taking older, not even all, and she defined this for me. I did not know this, but not just taking older buildings, but it could be land that's already has the infrastructure and then building. But we talk about building to rent, things like residential or commercial properties or getting hit by a train. We talk about that.
Which was interesting.
Which was a fascinating story. I want to know, it's a mystery. We're going to call this episode The Mystery of the Train Track Accident.
I love it.
Was it a hit and run? Was it an
It
accident?
was a hit and run for sure.
We want you to tell us. Let us know in the comments below the video on what you think it is. And speaking of that, if you like this episode, if you like any of the episodes of this show, please do me a favor, like, comment, whatever you're watching this on right now, if you're on YouTube or whatever, or listening to it on Spotify, give us a little rating review. That helps us a ton. And then, and then I'll give you a big old bear hug when I see you in person.
Yeah.
That's all I got. Without wasting any more time, let's get to this week's show sponsor. This episode is brought to you by our friends at TurboTenant and Ballpoint Marketing. These two companies are big supporters of the show, and they know how to work with real estate investors and help real estate investors grow their businesses. So be sure to stay tuned to hear how you can get, discounts and free stuff from them both. And as you probably know, all the profits from this show go to charities of the guest choosing. So when you listen to the sponsors on the show and you work with these hand-chosen by me sponsors, you're actually doing good for the world. Now let's get to the show. Katie Neason, welcome to the show.
Glad to be here.
This is going to be so much fun. This is going to be awesome. So Katie has been hanging out at my house actually the last, week?
Yeah.
Staying in my ohana with your son, Sam.
Lucky you.
Lucky me. We had some late night sauna sessions, some hot tub sessions. That sounds weird. There's more people than just us. Cam's been around.
Cold plunge, first time.
Cold plunge. We've been doing that. It's been a good time. So I'm excited to dig into your life a little bit. You're also, you do a lot of cool stuff. So Katie, I know you as a redeveloper, I'd call it. You develop, but you also redevelop. We'll talk about what that means. A lot of downtowns. You're really big on the idea of redeveloping the downtown and bringing back like small town America. I love it. We'll talk about that. I know you you flip houses. I know that you do new builds. I know you are a wife. Your husband's amazing. And
he's a cowboy.
He is the cowboy. The other day, somebody saw him in a store and thought he was, Sam Houston?
Sam Elliott.
Sam Elliott, yeah.
Very embarrassing moment.
Yeah, she took a picture
Are
with
you
him.
kidding me?
And
Sam
then
Elliott's
kissed him.
amazing.
Yeah, and then kissed him, yes.
Lucky her.
Yeah.
Sam Elliott's amazing.
Yes. He's old now, though. So he's not sure if that's a compliment anymore or not.
Anyway, your husband is a quintessential cowboy in both looks and in what he does for a living. You are a mother of a couple kids. I know one of them is hanging out with us this week, Sam. And Sam's actually part of the First Deal program. So I'm excited to get him his technically second deal because he had one that fell in his lap. We'll bring him on the show someday to tell that story.
Pumped.
Yeah, I'm excited for that. So I know you as all that. I also know you once got found unconscious on top of an active railroad track.
I remember
We'll get into that story.
I also know you as when I met you 4 years ago now. within 30 seconds, you threw water all over my face.
And I remember it was well-deserved.
All right, we're going to hit on that story as well. So that's how we know you. But take us back before all that. Who was Katie Neason?
It's a good question. It's very complicated.
It is.
Surely. I grew up with two parents who've been married over 50 years.
Wow.
And
to each other?
To each other, it turns out, and only once.
Only once.
Yeah. All the right pieces.
Perfect.
They both came from really poor backgrounds and were in real estate very successful, but it was definitely the highs and lows of success. So we saw lots of ups and downs, but they gave us anything we wanted. Like, that is why I try not to spoil my kids, because I was raised so spoiled.
You were spoiled?
Totally spoiled and still expect it.
Really?
And I am the youngest of three girls. And I have always been fascinated by money and money creation. I don't really know where it came from, but I think looking back, we went through bankruptcy in the 80s because both of my parents were in real estate. And that was during the savings and loan crisis. And I remember being on the bus, going home and seeing our ski boat sitting in like someone else's yard. I remember my mom taking us on an amazing joyride in a T-top Stingray Corvette, loaded us kids in the back. I remember going, it had to be hundreds of miles an hour. And then coming back up our long driveway, because we lived out in the country, with my dad in disapproval, tapping his toe. It was basically the last joyride before it got repoed. So I have these really vivid memories. But what I saw was there were people who were getting really rich in our town during that. And I couldn't understand, like, why are we losing everything and other people making money? So I've always been really fascinated by money and how it works and where it goes. And that's me.
Yeah.
What did your parents do in real estate? Were they agents?
My mom has been an agent for almost 50 years. And she's like workaholic, always had 2 or 3 jobs growing up, always side jobs. And then my dad was in steel erection. So he did commercial construction.
That's cool. And you still work with your mom, right?
Yeah, my mom is my business partner.
Yeah,
I convinced her that we could make it work.
We tried to get her here, but she was like, no, I can't make it. She's too big of a deal. So we have to settle with the younger partner.
Totally. Y'all couldn't handle her.
Yeah. All right. So tell us how you got into real estate. What was the very first deal you ever did?
Yeah. So I mean, technically, when we bought our property, when we moved back home after having our son, we bought a place that we couldn't afford. So it had like a barn apartment. And all we needed to do is add a kitchenette. And realizing that if we could rent that out for $600 a month, it was way cheaper than all of the stuff we didn't want that we were looking at.
Yeah.
And so technically, we still rent that barn apartment to this day.
You still have it?
Yeah.
That's
So it was a house hack.
It's a house hack.
It's amazing.
Yeah. And then I read Rich Dad, Poor Dad just before we moved back home. And the reason it changed my life is I was convinced I wanted to be an entrepreneur, but I did not want to be in real estate because of the ups and downs that I experienced as a kid. When I read Rich Dad, Poor Dad, the thing that went off for me is that my family's financial issues were not because of real estate. It was just they outpaced their financial education. They came from basically nothing. They made tons of money, so they spent it all. And so a light bulb went off. And I was like, I know real estate. I've always been around real estate. That makes sense. But I Googled Rich Dad, Poor Dad. And people didn't say positive things about him.
No.
And so I didn't know if it was all a crock or not. So I bought a $17,000 condo on a street where everything was boarded up. And I even financed that through a family loan because I wanted to do all the steps to see if it would really work. And I had that thing forever. And I even owner financed it for a while. And then I got to repo it, which was awesome. I went to the courthouse and I just wanted to be someone with my estatey or attorney or whatever, like just to see that side of it too. Learned so much from it. But yeah, that's how I intentionally got into investing in real estate.
We're obviously going to cover a lot of your story, but a couple quick things. Is your husband involved in real estate much? Or has he been ever?
Yeah, only for special favors. He is a craftsman and he is a perfectionist. And I am like, let's just break it and fix it as we go. And so we could be married or we could work together. And we've chosen to be married. Yeah. And so no, but if I have a special project with 2 women running construction jobs, there tends to be special projects that every sub will tell you can't do that. So on those, I will enlist him to do something very specific that I can't get anyone else to do. But generally, no.
What does your husband do?
He's a cowboy.
Cowboy.
So on his tax return, it's working cowboy. So he breeds, raises horses, and works on ranches throughout the state. Yeah.
Tell us about Bryan, Texas. Why do you live in Bryan, Texas? What do you love about Bryan, Texas?
Where even is Bryan, Texas?
So, where is this place? So, Bryan, Texas is Bryan College Station is the MSA. It's about 250,000 people, and it's between Dallas, Houston, and Austin. And it's the home of Texas A&M University, which is the largest university in the country. And it is by far the economic driver. So it has a very slow but growing economy. Not big peaks, but also not big valleys. So it is a great place to invest. I don't know how you count generations. So I'm either third or fourth. Is the fob the fresh off the boat? Are they generation 0 or 1? I don't really know. Yeah. So I'm either third or fourth generation, and have just a love for it. Once downtown started revitalizing and just hearing the stories from my mom and others, how it used to be. And then how when I was a kid, it was boarded up and you didn't go down there except to get Mexican food into the feed store. Yeah. Otherwise, it wasn't safe. And then to just see the momentum and being built back. And then going across the world and experiencing other really cool towns and realizing, oh, people live in cool places. But in America, we don't build cool places. We build places we want to escape from. And so just all of that coming together, it was the perfect place for me to get into redevelopment.
It is a cute downtown. And I will say this about Bryan, Texas. I have, yeah. So my wife and I did a road trip, and the kids around the country in our little Airstream trailer, 2 years ago now, like right after leaving the Bigger Pockets podcast. And we went around and my wife and I have a thing every morning, no matter where we are, we Google, like generally what's the best coffee shop in the area. We go get a latte. It's just like on that trip, we probably had 100 lattes in 100 days. In that, the 2 best lattes worldwide, because we went over to Europe for a bit of that trip, was in Oban, Scotland, and in Bryan, Texas. So
really?
The coffee shop you took me to, and then you paid even, that was the best American.
Shout out to Harvest
latte.
Cafe.
Harvest Cafe.
How far
on Main Street?
How far away is Bryan from Texas A&M?
We're 5 miles.
5 miles? Gotcha.
So do you get a ton of student rentals in your town? Is that
Our
a strategy?
Student rentals definitely drive the town. We do not do student rentals.
Why?
So a couple of reasons. One, students don't want to live downtown. We don't have lazy rivers and beach volleyball or any of that stuff. Professors don't want to live next to students. So most of our tenants are definitely professionals, and a huge majority of them are somehow associated with the university.
Gotcha.
Plus, in Texas, we're like, oh, big sprawling places, large houses, cul-de-sac neighborhoods. But people who are professors who come here and they come from the Northeast or urban areas, they're like, why are you taking me to a cul-de-sac neighborhood? Like, what do you think I am, like 65? Yeah. So they don't even get it. So it's a perfect fit for what we're doing.
Are you a Texas A&M fan?
I am a college graduate. Didn't even know there were other options when I went to school. Thank God I got accepted because there were no other applications submitted. So yeah, it's hard to be there and not be a diehard fan. I didn't grow up just loving it, but once you move away, then all of a sudden you find yourself defending it. And so my passion has grown since leaving the town.
Do you go to games?
I prefer to watch games at home.
At home.
They're amazing. They're not overrated. You should go, Cam. You would love it.
A Texas A&M game?
Yes. The 12th Man is amazing.
12th Man is weird.
Yes.
Wait, what is this? I don't even know what this
is.
Good
weird. So 12th Man is all of the student population. And so what happened back in the day when they're having, maybe it was a war. I can't really remember the details, but we barely had enough people to make a team. And one person stood up in the stands the whole time. Like, if y'all need an extra person, call me. He was the 12th man.
That's
there's
where
11
it came from.
That's where it came from. So now every football game, you stand 100% of the time. You never sit down. You do cheers the whole. So everyone's saying, we'll be the 12th man. We'll get in onto the field if you need us. So they stand ready.
College football is so much fun.
It's so amazing.
And they're the SEC now, right?
Yeah, they've been for several years.
They've been for several years?
Yeah, Texas just came over this year.
Oh, it was Texas that came over. Yeah. Mizzou, when this airs, Mizzou will have won the national championship.
Not even close. And we're playing them. So I'm excited to contact you. It's this weekend, actually.
Can we put a bet on it?
Yes.
How much?
$100.
Wow. You heard it here.
I'm going to send you my Venmo. But
all right,
I'll be ready for it.
I want to know more about this, like downtown redevelopment, this idea. But before we get there, I want to bring in this week's show sponsor. But before we do that, every episode of the show, we ask the guest for a charity that they support so we can send all the profits from the show to that charity. So where are we sending the money for this episode and why?
Yeah, kind of torn by this, but I want to send it to the Alzheimer's Association.
Okay.
I come from a very long line of Alzheimer's, even before they knew what to call it. And so I also worked for a startup company that took care of people with Alzheimer's and dementia. And man, just what a horrible disease for the family, even more than the person, because they'll get to a point where they don't know anyway. But there's got to be a cure. I can't believe they haven't found one yet. But
I know they're going at some point, and it's going to be great. They every so often you hear like articles like once a year of like this new like promising drug or this promising cure. Nothing's quite hit yet.
Nope.
But it's whoever figures it out is going to be a trillionaire, and then
and create a lot, of good.
And create a lot of good. Would you ever invest? I mean, side note before you say the sponsor, but would you ever invest in like adult, like family homes or adult like Alzheimer care?
Yeah, I wouldn't say I would never do it. I would say I've kind of already done it since I was working for a startup, and I actually did the real estate development and the licensing, and we had a really unique concept that was only being done in one place in the Northeast, and that was the small concept, 16 residents in a neighborhood. And so now that's kind of the trend that everyone's doing, and we exited at a really great time. And you hear, the demographics, everyone's going to need it. Like they've been saying that for a long time now, which is true. But the supply is the problem. There are actually lots and lots of options because everyone can open up and do 3 unrelated and not even be licensed. Yeah. So I think the business model, you just got to dive deep and make sure you understand it and then be able to execute at a really high level. So we got in at a great time. It was super successful. We sold at the right time. So I don't have an itch to do it, but I'm not necessarily opposed to it.
I listened to somebody that's in that space, and they said, which was a crazy statistic, that like 80% of people that live past 90 either get some form of dementia or Alzheimer's or Parkinson's.
Don't quote me on this, but I think it's 50% likelihood of getting Alzheimer's if you live to age 85.
Yeah.
That's wild.
So or dementia. So that could be Alzheimer's, Parkinson's, any of that.
But I heard a stat that said anybody who makes it to 100 has an actual 100% chance of dying someday. Have you heard of that?
It's a really good stat. Yeah. I don't know where you get your information, but time well spent.
The whole point of that comment, though, was as people are starting to live longer, like there's going to be so much memory care needed.
Totally. And memory care is obviously the most intense and the most expensive charge, but the overhead is so high that I would probably look at maybe not doing that. The problem is most of your residents are going to end up needing memory care. So most people just evolve because they don't want to lose their residents. So it's like you set it up to start with. Anyway.
Well, let's jump into this week's show sponsor. All right, so picture this. I just signed a lease with a tenant. They seemed great on paper. Then a few months in, everything kind of started going sideways. Suddenly, they're missing rent deadlines. There's a broken window. The neighbors are complaining about them. I realized I'd put someone in my rental property without properly screening them, and now I was living a landlord's nightmare. But lucky for you, you don't have to make the same mistakes as I made early on because you have the luxury of using TurboTenant. So if you're managing any rental properties right now, and you're still trying to vet tenants and collect rent and keep track of work orders and market all your vacancies, look, TurboTenant is going to be your best friend. It's an app that allows you to do all of that and so much more, all in the same platform. Plus, it's like stupid cheap, like seriously less than your Netflix subscription. I don't even know why it's so cheap. And if you want it even cheaper, I got a discount for you. Just go to turbotenant.com/betterlife and use code Brandon10 for 10% off. Or go to my Instagram and DM me the word toolbox, and I'll send you a link to a bunch of cool free tools that they have, like the rent estimator, financial freedom calculator, and more. Hey, so many of you have heard me tell that story about how I bought my daughter Rosie a fourplex, like a rental property, the week she was born, and how we put it on an 18-year, mortgage payoff plan so it'll be paid off when she graduates from high school. So essentially, my tenants are paying for Rosie's entire college. Now that's pretty awesome, right? Not to mention, it's also making almost like $1,000 a month in cash flow. That's double awesome. But I don't think I've ever shared really exactly how I found that deal. So here goes. I found it through direct mail marketing. And here's how. I simply built a high quality lead list of a lot of names and addresses of potential sellers, and I sent out a whole bunch of mail to every person on that list. And then I talked on the phone to a ton of people, and then I finally got one person that was interested enough to sell me the property, and I got a deal at a great price. So building that giant lead engine like that, I mean, it works, but it takes a ton of time, knowledge, and effort, which can really slow down an investor's growth, which is why I reached out to my friend Ryan with Ballpoint Marketing. I asked him to sponsor this show because they're the best at doing everything that I just talked about. Like, they're literally going to help you build your entire lead engine. You're going to get a one-on-one call where they're going to help you figure out what you want and then build your lead list for you. Their robots are going to handwrite the postcards with a real pen, which is super cool. They're going to send them out, and they'll even answer the phone calls for you. Plus, they'll help you track it all inside of a CRM that they create for you. I know, it's crazy, crazy awesome. And it's going to help you land way more deals consistently. And because you're awesome and because you listen to this show, you're going to get a discount when you tell them that I sent you, or just use code Brandon when checking out with them. I love Ballpoint Marketing and officially recommend them to all my friends and masterminds. So if you're ready to kick your deal flow up a notch, getting more quality leads without pulling your hair out, just go to ballpointmarketing.com/betterlife. Or just shoot me a DM on Instagram with the word ballpoint, like one word, ballpoint, and I'll hook you up with them directly. All right, let's get into development of downtown. Why did that fascinate you? Why do you care about redeveloping a downtown? What does that even mean?
Yeah, it really kind of evolved because when I convinced my mom that we should be business partners, it was actually about low-income housing for fourplexes. And so it was right after the crash, we bought up several fourplexes. They were all vacant. We redid them. We put tenants in it. And within 2 weeks, realized we hated it. I hated the routine maintenance of it. I hated the person I was becoming. I was becoming cynical, not just to my tenants, to everyone.
Cynical? No.
I think it scarred me for life because it turns out I'm still a little cynical and it really brought out the worst in me. And so we really did like fixing them up. And when we would tour them, because we didn't do white walls and all, tenants were like, oh my God, this would be so amazing. And so we liked that part. So we sold them all. We pivoted. We sold them all and we started flipping houses, which we loved. But I am pretty risk adverse. So for a flip, it's a cycle, right? I've been through a bunch of them as a kid. So I knew at some point it wouldn't work. And you don't know, it falls fast. So you can't plan for when that's going to happen. You just have to know it's going to happen and it's going to happen fast. So our fallback plan was everything had to break even as a long-term rental or we wouldn't flip it. So that threw out all the high-end flips. So it kept driving us towards these really, really bad shape houses that were towards downtown. And we started fixing them up, but they had all this amazing character. And we would fix them up and they would just get sold so fast. So we won't sell anything until it's staged and ready to go. But because my mom is a realtor and has been in that town for 50 years, they all follow us. And the minute I say power got turned on today, they all start reaching out with potential buyers. And so we loved it. It was really successful. Our egos were really growing. We thought we were pretty amazing and loved it. But it was a job. Now, it was a job that we loved, but the whole goal was to get passive income. And eventually it wasn't going to work anymore. And there really was no fallback plan when it didn't work. So we sat down and had a brain strategy meeting and said, if we don't want to have low income housing because we hate the operations and we can't just flip forever, what do we want to do? And at that time, we had been officing with a buddy in downtown. We'd walk over to turn our permits in and you could just start seeing it. You could tell people were struggling who were in downtown as businesses, but momentum was building. Like, man, we love this. And then we started talking about I started hearing all the stories. And then it kind of took off across the nation. Like a lot of small towns were just growing and kind of catching a vibe. So then we were like, is this emotion-based? Like we want to believe the signs or is it really grounded in something? So the Real Estate Research Center is at A&M. I worked there answering phones in college, so that ended up paying off. So I called one of the researchers and said, look, I want to know, are downtowns successful? Are businesses able to pay rent? Do people live in downtowns? So he said, hey, if you'll let us publish the articles with what I find, I'll do a research project across the state, narrow it down to cities that are similar to ours, go and visit with them, talk to the landlords, talk to the business owners, and find out what's driving the economics. And basically, he just validated what we believed was true. But that's how we got the confidence that this wasn't an emotionally based decision and was grounded in reality.
That's super cool.
Yeah.
So why not just go into a big town? Like you're in a small town. Why not just go into a big town, just go and I don't know, do what everyone else does, like go build multifamily or buy multifamily or something.
Yeah. So my passion is, like we talked about earlier, is I want to create places that we're not trying to escape, but places that we actually want to be in. And when you go to Italy and other cities in Europe, you're like, this is so cool. Like people want to be here and want to hang out. And it's nothing special.
Yeah.
It's just that the buildings are relatively small scale. It feels like you're not with 40-foot or 40-story buildings. Like you don't feel overwhelmed. You don't feel like someone's going to jump around the corner and kill you, like all that stuff. And I was like, why don't we create places like this? So then I started doing a bunch of research on it and how towns work, and came across an organization called Strong Towns, where they really talk about the development pattern and why we develop the way we do, and just dove deep into the history. And I was like, you know what I want? I want Main Street to be owned by small investors and business owners, because that's a better country than places that are owned by institutional money that are never even going to step foot into your town. Like, I hear Bentonville is amazing. Have y'all been to Bentonville?
No.
I have years ago, but
I hear it is amazing. They have amazing biking trails and walking trails and parks. You're welcome. That's because we shop at Walmart, and all of our money floods back into their town so they can have an amazing town. Why are we doing that? Let's build companies in our town where the money stays in our town, so we can afford to have really amazing places.
Yeah, we went to Italy this summer and went to Tuscany, and we were driving around, and there's like little small towns every 5 or 6 miles apart, and we just would stop at all of them. But they have the main street with the cafes and the restaurants, and it's just.
And
it's
people
so
are sitting
beautiful.
out over on their balconies, just overlooking the streets, and they're saying hi.
It's integrated
as you walk by,
like with
and,
residential, and
so wonderful.
it's amazing.
It can be like that.
You don't find that here.
No, there's something. I feel like there's something toxic about the Texas sprawl of like the cul-de-sac you're talking about, and like the McMansions. You don't know your neighbor, and like we've done that out of necessity, maybe in America.
So basically what happened at the end of World War II, they were so afraid that we were going to fall back into the Great Depression that they came up with this huge plan, infrastructure plan. Let's build these huge highways. And so we just started building because we had lots of money. So we started building and spending money on neighborhoods on the edge of town, and then bigger homes. And and then we were super successful monetarily. So it just kept feeding itself. And no other country was developed this way. And no one stopped to say, I know we can do this, but should we do this? And now it's kind of coming home to Reagan, because the problem is the way we build is super expensive. So they get all of that infrastructure paid for, but there's zero money to maintain it. So now this whole neighborhood that was built to a finished state all at once, it's all going to fail at once. All of those houses are going to be dilapidated, all the water lines, all the sewer lines. Instead of those towns that we're in, it's incremental. There's like some crazy looking places, and there's some really nice places because it's incrementally developing over time, but it won't fail all at once.
Yeah, that's what I've fallen in love with Maui with, is the fact it does feel like a small town where like I can't go to Akamai without seeing somebody that I don't know, or go for a walk without seeing 3 or 4 people that I know. Like, it feels so much different than suburbia.
It has lots of texture and tapestry. And like when you go to suburban, you think, you know what I want? I really want to go visit that neighborhood. I can't wait to walk down the street and see every garage door. That's what we're building. No one wants to go there.
No sidewalks.
And we'll build a privacy fence in the back so we can all go and hide there. We won't even have to interact with our neighbors. Like, it's crazy town.
All right, so let's talk about examples of what you mean when you're saying you're redeveloping. That we call it redeveloping, right? What does that mean? Give me an example of maybe a deal you've done.
Yeah. So first off, development versus redevelopment. It's used interchangeably. I use it interchangeably, but it's actually, there is a difference. So development, think of it as taking virgin land and developing something new on it. Your roads, water, sewer, you're getting it to it. Redevelopment just means the infrastructure is already in place. It has nothing to do if the building is existing or if it's new construction. It has to do with the horizontal utilities. So they may have to be upgraded or improved, but it has previously been developed. So we do redevelopment because everything we do is urban infill. Projects that we do, so our asset class is downtown. So it's our asset class isn't townhomes, it isn't flipping houses, it isn't mixed use, it isn't apartment complexes, it's downtown. So when we get a lot, we assess what makes the most sense. So we believe in order for a downtown to sustain viability economically, it needs lots of heads and beds. Because how a development pattern works is all of the commercial infrastructure comes after rooftops. So you'll get 5 or 6 new neighborhoods, and then all of a sudden the strip centers pop up, the Target goes that way. But when you're revitalizing an area, all the houses have mostly been demoed or blighted, but what's still there is the commercial infrastructure. So what happens is everyone goes in, starts putting commercial buildings or commercial retail shops in these buildings, but there's no people to support it every day. So then they get on this like event flywheel where we got to have a new event. But a business cannot maintain itself on 5 events a month.
Yeah.
And so what you need are lots of heads and beds. We totally understand that. We're not sure our city does or cities do in general. They think more events, more people, this will work. And so we'll look at it and say, okay, number one priority is heads and beds. But if it's on a pedestrian street, we don't want to waste storefront on heads and beds. So then we'll do mixed use. If it's not on a pedestrian street, then we'll do like a boutique apartment. If it's in a transitional area with lots of single family houses, we like to do townhomes. Anything we can deed single family, then we'll sell it because we strongly believe you should have mixed uses. You should have commercial, retail, office, residential, renters, owners. So we just look at what makes sense for that part of downtown, and that's what we build.
Have you talked to Jason, Maui Jason that we're friends with? Have you talked to him about what he's thinking about doing in Maui with that?
No.
We even hung out at his house and
I
played
know that
horse
I
race
beat
for
him
hours.
twice.
Yeah, you
in
did.
horse
Yeah,
racing,
you did
and
beat
I
him.
slapped him,
Yes.
but I haven't talked to him about
Oh, you
development.
slapped him.
Yeah, that's a long story. That's a great story. You and Jason should talk because he's basically working on something similar here in
I
Maui.
had no
So
idea.
yeah, I don't know why I never made that connection
I
before.
always
But
feel like we don't connect, so
Yeah.
this could be a good
yes,
opportunity.
exactly. You'll love it. What is a boutique apartment? I know boutique hotels. What's a boutique
So
apartment?
basically, it's just small. So the one we just built was 3-story, 18 lofts.
Mhm.
So it's small in scale, and it does not look like all the other apartments that you've seen. So one of the things that came out in our study is people who want to live downtown want where they're living to reflect their personality,
Yeah.
and they want funky, weird. And so we build things that are funky and weird. Our goal is, 50 or 100 years from now, with the next round of real estate investors, that they would die to get their hands on our building and get to refresh it, not to just tear it down and
Yeah.
build something different. So we want to build things that people will be proud to own in the future. Like when we get our hands on an amazing building right now, and we're like, oh, we're so lucky. Like that's what we want to create.
Are you holding on to the properties? Like, for example, the boutique
Yeah.
apartment, you're
So-
keeping it?
Everything that can be deeded single family, we sell. One, to create income, and 2, to create investable capital so that we can keep everything that's multi-tenant. We want to be 100% owner of everything, but life's just, like we said, 85, we're going to have dementia. Life's too short
Yeah.
to have to do that. So our goal is to put as much money in it as possible so that we can own 30 to 50%.
Okay.
Mm.
Because to me, a nightmare sounds like 5% of 1,000 doors. Like you
Yeah.
work just as hard for the 5% as the 50%. So my goal is to own fewer doors, less people, and a bigger percentage.
Who's your most handsome, funny, amazing partner you have in any deal? Bearded,
Gosh.
tall.
Yeah, I don't know, but I do have this one guy. I'm not sure where you're going with this, but I do have this one partner in a boutique apartment that I just built, Brandon Turner.
Oh my gosh,
Oh.
he's so cool. I love that
Has
guy.
she been paying you?
Yeah. You know what? I have no idea. Did we?
He has no idea.
I have
We
no
just
idea.
got it leased, so it's built. We just leased it. We have one left to lease, so it just came online.
Mhm.
And we'll build up reserves, and then we'll do distributions.
I'm excited.
Amazing.
I really have enjoyed. I mean, I've not been that active, obviously, in this one, but I really have enjoyed. We drove through, we saw what you were kind of working on, and I've enjoyed. This is my first development project I've ever done, so it's
Yeah.
been fun to kind of watch from afar.
You always remember your first.
Yeah, you always remember your first. Yeah.
How long does it take to build one of those?
Generally, the construction phase is 9 to 12 months.
9, 12 months?
Yeah. So all in, we're usually about 18 months
18
if we
months.
have to get it rezoned and entitled and all of that.
This is a broad question, but what is general profit? Like, what do you make on development? Like, where's the money come from? What's potential for somebody thinking, well, I don't know if I'm gonna do that or go buy some multifamily apartments?
We just do it all out of the goodness of our heart.
Yeah.
We lose
Yeah.
money on
Yeah,
everything
great.
we do.
Yeah,
I
perfect.
learned that from one of my partners.
It's
I
so
just
good.
lose money. I
Yeah,
donate it all. I just donate it all.
Just blew.
So we look for about 15 to 20% return. So it's not significantly different, but the play is the appreciation side.
Mm.
So because you're going into an area where you can buy the property pretty cheap because it's blighted, and then we're forcing the appreciation because every building we build appreciates the last building that we just did.
Mhm.
So it's really appreciation play, but it has to cash flow in the meantime because, again, we try and be conservative with
Mhm.
all of our investments.
Yeah.
So like the building the brand is a partner of, how much did it cost to build? What's it worth now?
Yeah.
What's
So I think the all-in cost is around $2 million.
uh-huh.
And the land cost for that one, I think, was like 280. So, and then the soft cost was probably around 200. So the rest of that, I don't do public math. The rest of that was the construction costs to build it. Our project size are typically between like $1.5 million to $4 million-ish is about the size project that we typically build.
Gotcha.
Yep.
Love it.
And how are you raising? I mean, you're raising some capital.
Yeah.
I mean, what's that been like for you?
Just so we're clear, you didn't give us any money.
I did not give you any money.
It's a different partnership. So don't ask him for a bunch of money. He's not going to. No, he didn't give it to us.
Yeah, exactly. I'm a partner.
Did you just work your way in saying, hey, you can say Brandon Turner's a partner?
That's what I do.
Yeah,
not quite.
That's what he does. No. We borrowed his balance sheet.
Yes.
So.
KP? KP.
Yeah.
KP. Love it.
What was the question?
How are you raising money? Like, what's that look like for you?
Yeah. So I only have a handful of investors, about 5. And they've been in almost every project. I am scared to death to take money from people. And I want to know them well. Yep. And I want them to understand what they're getting into. And I want to make sure that they are trying to grow their wealth, or maybe not even that. I want them to be trying to preserve their wealth, not grow their wealth. And they don't need my money to get to whatever they're going to next. And so almost all but one of my investors I've known 20, 25 years. And so it's been great. Now, the question is, what's the next level, right? And so I get people who reach out to me on Instagram and ask to invest in my properties. I even had one fly down from Canada and tour the properties. And when we left, he gave me a whole list of things that I needed to get him so he could be ready to invest in my next project. I never asked him to invest in my project. I thought, how bold. I don't even know you. So part of it is I'm a quirky personality. I throw water in your face when I meet you if it's needed.
It wasn't not needed.
I want to know where'd the water come from? Why did
we were having dinner?
Social. It was before dinner. We were just having drinks. We're getting to know each other. And I was learning about people's past. And I think I said I was a goody two-shoe. I'm pretty sure I said that. And so people always shock me when I hear like what was normal in their past. And I think I said something like, oh my gosh, really? And the response was, don't be a Karen.
In a joking, loving fashion.
And so I thought that's not funny. And so I happened to be, it wasn't like it was planned or it wasn't meditated. It was a reaction. I had a little cup of water. I threw it. It was beautiful. It slapped him right in his
across
face.
The face.
We all just met each other and everyone took a step back and were like,
who's the crazy?
Who's the crazy lady?
Yeah. So... And that's how I feel about with my investors. I want them to know they're getting a crazy lady and that's what they can expect. And most people think you are who they see on Instagram. Even though I try and be super real on Instagram, like that is not how you get to know someone. And so it makes me nervous to take money from people I don't know.
Yeah, I understand. Railroad track.
Yes.
Oh, tell us that story because I remember when this happened. It was
so the best way to get around town is on a scooter. We've had a scooter for years. And
how big is your town? Like
the downtown is only like 15 blocks.
15 blocks, okay.
Yeah. And then Bryan College Station together is about 250,000 people plus 100,000 of students. Okay. And so our downtown's relatively small. And when we flip houses, it's usually around downtown. So we can go and check on them like that. We love it. It's the easiest way to get around. I love it. And I've had the scooter for like a couple of years.
Kind of like one of those like Lime or Birds type scooters.
Yes,
like little
except we owned it. It wasn't rented, but that's what it is. Just a little electric scooter.
Okay, yep.
And so it was actually senior prom for my son.
Okay.
And we were in town to get like the flowers and all that jazz. And his buddy called and said, hey, we're going to go to lunch. And I was like, dude, just take my truck. You go to lunch. I'll scooter downtown and eat. I was on my way back to my office, which literally is probably 5-6 blocks away. It's downtown. We have lots of railroad tracks, the downside of most downtowns. I've been across this railroad track many times. The next thing I know, I woke up in the hospital, or at least became aware in the hospital, like a day and a half later. Still have no idea what happened. A lady found me laying on a very active railroad track. And at least she called 911. They asked if she was physically able to pull me off, which means it must have been bad because usually they don't want to move you, right? But they were worried a train could come. So she pulled me off the track. Now, what's weird is then she left. So she left me there.
Did she hit you?
I don't know. I doubt it. Like people don't do that, right? My guess is the track just caught my wheel in a really weird way, and it just slapped me down. I didn't try and protect myself. There were no signs.
Nobody leaves.
Why would she leave you? Unless do you know when they picked you up, were you conscious but just not coherent?
So I couldn't.
In your own,
I didn't know what was going on, but I was conscious. And so Yeah, and I caught my fall with my eye socket. So it broke in like 3 places. I broke the end of my elbow off and they had to screw that back on like craziness. And then my son is calling because he thinks I'm just talking and he's going to be late for his prom. He needs to go home. And after about the 6th time, the EMT answered the phone and said, your mom's been in an accident. We have her in the ambulance. So he got to call the family and say, oh, mom's going to the hospital.
Did he miss his prom?
It was also, he ended up going. He was super nervous. They had to talk him into going because they're like, there's nothing you can do here for your mom. And then the next day was Mother's Day. So we were all going to the lake. So instead we spent Mother's Day in the hospital.
Yeah.
I have very little memory of it. It's a crazy story. I still have no idea what happened. I think it was just an accident. Other people think different things.
Wow. That lady hit you.
Yeah, that lady definitely hit you.
Yeah, she hit you. Called
It is
Nobody leaves.
It is weird that she would call 911, drag me off the track, and then just leave me there.
We saw you at Limitless probably a month and a half after it happened, and you were still really
My eye
banged
was
up.
still like big and black and in an
so
arm.
you must have looked really bad after it happened. She's not.
As a matter of fact, my husband would not be seen with me in public because everyone assumed he beat me. And I may have leaned into that a little bit.
That is, did you guys get, I'm so fat. Did you get, like, is there cameras or anything? Or?
So the funny thing is I have a cousin that runs CSI. And so my husband calls her while I'm still unconscious. And it's like, is there a report? But they only sent the EMT because the lady said it was an accident. They didn't send the cops. So my funny thing that now the fire marshal knows and he doesn't think it's funny, I'm like, number 1 suspect, fire marshal. Because he and I have a really spotty relationship. And he's the guy who could dispatch an EMT and not the cops. So they ended up opening a case afterwards. They went around, tried to get cameras. We even had cameras because we were building around the site. But there was a tree right in the way. So you could see me go and then you could see me down, but you could not see what actually happened behind the camera. So no, we don't know. It's better. It's fine. Wow. I lived. And what I'm thankful for, a train didn't come.
Train didn't come. Yeah. Wild. All right, back to real estate.
Yeah, something useful.
I want to talk about the difficulty in developing. Like, let's say you take a downtown, you got a building, you're like, oh, I think this could be, like, for example, the town I used to live in, Montesano, Washington, cute little town, great downtown, maybe, you know, smaller than Bryan, I'm sure, but like small, cute little town, a couple stoplights. There's like this old building there that was just beautiful and completely empty. And I always thought I could just redevelop this thing and just turn it into something amazing, like a boutique apartment. Never did because it was overwhelming to me. Is it overwhelming? Should people like be really experienced to get into this?
I don't think it's overwhelming, but I think you need to make sure that you understand the right questions to ask, because if you just ask questions, you might not get the right answers. And I would say probably the number 1 question I get has to do with, can I do what you're doing in my town?
Yeah.
So it's basically like, is my town ready for redevelopment? And
what's your answer?
So basically, there's 4 things that you need to ask and know to see if it's ready for redevelopment. 1, are there strong fundamentals? And that doesn't matter what you're investing in. You need population growth, you need steady jobs, and affordability. That doesn't matter what kind of, so that's number 1. Number 2 is, does the city actually want redevelopment? They all say yes, and they all say we have an affordability crisis, and so we want you to build housing. But very few actually mean it. So you don't want to trust their words. You want to look for action. And the thing to look for is, have they invested taxpayers' money to help the area get better? So have they improved the infrastructure, upgraded the water lines, installed new streets, put in medians, made it pedestrian friendly, added trees like hardscape and landscape that make people want to be there? And then are they offering grants for people to come in over that infrastructure improvement and make it better? And the best way to tell that is just Google City of Bryan grants, and they'll come up with the grants. And the grants are usually specific to certain areas and for certain things. You're looking for grants in the area that you're wanting to redevelop. So now, if they've put money into it and they're willing to spend more money on it, if the developers and investors don't come in and improve it, they look like bad stewards of the community money. So they are super incentivized to help you make it work.
Yeah.
So then number 3 is, you don't want to be first mover. Rarely are investors actually first movers. It's usually owner occupied. So in a commercial setting, that's the guy who has the plant shop. He owns the building and he runs his business out of it, or the architect firm who owns their building and rents out some other spaces. You want those guys to go first because they're validating that they can sustain a business. And then you be the second mover. Now, it doesn't mean you can't be successful. The problem is it's high risk and high reward. And we're looking for asymmetrical bets, right? We want low risk, higher reward. So you don't want to be first mover. And then the last thing is, does your vision align with the cities? And again, every jurisdiction does a 20-year plan. So you can just Google City of Bryan Comprehensive Plan. It's bazillion pages. You're looking for the area that you want to invest in. They will tell you what they want there. Do they want it to be pedestrian friendly, human scale buildings, increased population? So if they're saying, hey, we want retail shops, we want this to be a pedestrian destination and we need more population, and you go to them with a 400 unit apartment building, your vision is not aligned. Yeah. So don't beat your head up against the wall. But they're basically telling you, we want mixed use. We want people living downtown. We want the opportunity for shops to be here. So the fourth thing is you just want to make sure your vision's aligned. If all four of those things are yes, it's like the honeymoon phase for the town. They want to help you do whatever is needed. They're not worried about following all the codes. They're worried about getting movement. Mm-hmm. And so then as it more and more investors come in, it gets harder and harder because now they're trying to deal with growth and how do we limit it? So what you really want to do is, can I answer those 4 questions and get in on the honeymoon phase? Because then you have a long lead to run it up and you can force appreciation on your buildings with the more and more projects that you do.
Mm. Wow. That was really good. That's like a YouTube video right there.
Yeah. Awesome.
That's going to be a YouTube video right there.
I'll let my people know.
Let your people know.
Do you get a lot of like tax credits and stuff?
Yeah,
when you're building?
Say this.
Yeah, I don't. Usually what our city does are grants and facade money. Mm-hmm. I have not done this, so take that for what it's worth. Hate tax credits. Mm-hmm. And this is why. I believe you can get huge chunks of money, right? But you give up control. You give up control of timeline. You give up control of how to renovate the building. You have to do certain things if it's a historical tax credit. I believe you will probably be better off with the velocity of money. If I can't afford those historical wood windows, it doesn't matter. I still have to put them in there. The tax credit thing, everyone tells you 9 months you'll have them. They're liars. I've not talked to anyone who's got them in 9 months. And you don't control the timeline. Mm-hmm. And you can't start until it's approved. And so your money, at the end of the day, you're going to get a lot of money. But the question is, had you taken that same amount and been able to build 4 projects in the amount of time you were waiting on tax credits for one, have you been better off just going at your own pace? And you have more assets and you're forcing more appreciation. So I do not go after anything that requires historical or restoration. We do renovation. So we want to appreciate the historical character, and we don't, like if there's an exposed brick wall, we're going to leave it. But we don't try and recreate the historical character that is already gone.
Gotcha.
What's the first step for a new investor or maybe even old investor, like just whatever, they've never done redevelopment. Mm-hmm. First step, I want to go redevelop. I know my town's good for it. It passes all these 4 criteria points. I'm ready. What is it?
Go find the land. So basically what we did is we just walked 15 blocks and we walked down and we wrote down every address of something that we thought could work. And we just started trying to find them on Facebook. If we could get them on the phone, we did. If not, we sent them letters. Like, it's just like any other real estate deal. You need the volume coming in. What you don't want to do is fall in love with that building on Main Street that you have the perfect passion for, because then you're going to get stuck and you're going to believe it can't happen. And all these old people think I'm their retirement plan and they won't sell me the buildings and nobody wants, just go and put all the fishnets out there and just see what you can reel in.
That is such good advice for every real estate investor in any deal. Because like we all do that, right? It's like people tend to, especially newbies, it's like, oh, my neighbor across the street is selling their house. I'm going to try to buy that house. I'm like, it's not the house. Like the chance that the perfect investment for you is the one that happened to be sitting in front of you. It's also like with partners. It's like
that with hiring people.
Yeah, hiring people. It's like, my brother-in-law, he's amazing. I'm like, you're saying the best accountant in the country you could possibly hire is the guy that's related to you? Like, what are the odds? What are the odds? Like, it's just when we approach from a more of an abundant mindset of like, I don't know what the deal is, but here's criteria. Yep. And then you do the work needed to sift through and then you get one. That's the approach to buying a deal. I think almost every newbie screws that up and they go the other way.
Yeah. And the nice thing about like a redevelopment in a certain area, like your boundary is geographic. So you don't have to worry about, is it an old building? Is it townhomes? Is it whatever? It's just the geographic boundary.
So question with that, do you ever, because your town's only 15 blocks, are you worried about like at some point we're going to be done redeveloping Bryan, then what?
Yeah, I kind of feel like if we build out our pipeline that we already have and then just do 1 or 2 projects a year, like I don't want to own 50 buildings in my downtown, not because I don't want to own them, but because that's not financially responsible.
Right.
So my goal is to build out the portfolio and then use all of the cash flow coming off of that to then diversify from there. I have zero desire to go into someone else's town because, like I said, I think people should invest where they're invested.
Yeah.
So I don't want to go to your town and tell you what you need in your town. But maybe, I don't know yet, but maybe the next path is if I find someone who, you know, maybe I partner with them in their downtown just for the first project or 2 so that they can get the confidence. But I don't see myself going into some other town and trying to recreate all the systems and everything that we have in our town.
You also teach this stuff. You have like a, what do you call it?
Yeah, I do. I have a coaching program for people who want to redevelop. And the main reason is people would message me on Instagram and say, hey, I love what you're doing. I have this property in Timbuktu and this is what I want to do with it. Can I? And I'm like, okay, so that's a 2-week research project. And I want to help you because when we decided to do redevelopment, I started Googling. There was nothing. There was no help. The first deal we bought was not a buildable lot. We wanted to put townhomes on it, more townhomes than were allowed because there were limitations. Like we didn't know anything. The thing that happened that was right is our vision was aligned with the city. Dumbly, I mean, we didn't intentionally check that out, but it was. And they helped us be successful. And that's how I know it doesn't matter what the rules are. If you're doing what the city wants, they have the ability to help you do that.
Very cool. Yeah. Do you wear a seatbelt when you drive in a car?
Only if people insist that I do it because the bell is irritating them and they can't control their own emotions.
What's your view on seatbelt laws, Katie? We've had this discussion before.
I've had 4 tickets here for not wearing my seatbelt.
How does that make you feel?
I feel like you're empowered to make decisions that impact yourself. Why does someone else need to tell you?
That's what I say. I think that there's no freedom in that.
And I really don't know where this line of questioning is coming from.
I just know we've had a discussion before. You've gotten very animatedly angry at seatbelt laws.
And that bell really irritates me.
Yeah, I know. You get mad, and so you plug it in. And every time we're driving together, and that bell's still like, plug it in, like taking away my freedom.
And people get so angry about listening to the bell. Like, control your own emotions. It's not bothering me.
Well, I've gotten 4 tickets because Maui is very strict about that. And I have a truck where my windows are down so they can see in my car all the time. And I hate it because 1, you can ride in the back of a truck. And
don't have to.
In Maui, you can be in the back of a truck.
School buses don't have seatbelts, but for some reason, me driving my car at 30 miles an hour up and down South Kihei means that I have to get a ticket.
Thank you, government, for protecting me from myself. I don't know what I'd do without you.
Because I mean, like, I get it. Speeding, like you're putting other people in danger.
Yeah, I get that.
Yeah, right. You don't want to impact someone else's life, but this is your own.
If I don't want to wear a seatbelt, I don't have to wear a seatbelt. If I want to
die in a car accident by being ejected from a car, that's my right. Which also doesn't make sense, but still.
All right, we got to shift this conversation back to not necessarily real estate, but I want to go back to what we call the 3, 2, 1 pivot. Yes. So the idea of a pivot, your life is going one direction and then something impacts it to go a different direction. So let's start out with 3 books that have impacted your life and made you pivot.
So I read a lot of books. I can't remember what came from any of them. I don't know how Brandon does it. It annoys me that he can.
You don't read books? Like the reason I do, by the way,
that is not true.
I don't. No. I don't mean you don't. The way you remember everything you read is you don't read books, you study books. It's a difference. Pen in hand, taking notes. Anyway, keep going.
Anyway, like I said, I come from a long line of Alzheimer's.
And she had a traumatic brain injury.
Yeah, that is true. You did have a brain injury. Yeah, you did have that.
Okay, so what's the question? Books. Okay.
Books. Impacted your life.
One book that's impacted my life was a couple of years ago. I read it. It's called The Great Depression, A Diary by Benjamin Roth. Have y'all heard of it?
No.
It's super intriguing. So as uncertainty came and like we were talking about recessions, I became obsessed with, I think I even reached out to you and said, hey, have you read any books about like recessions or whatever? He's like, nah, nothing I can think of. It's like, thanks for the effort.
There is a good one to have now, but keep going.
No, it's too late. And so I found this book, and it was an attorney in a small town in Ohio. I think it was Youngstown, maybe. Mm-hmm. And he basically just chronicled for 10 years, like what was happening during the Depression. His clients, how they had no business. It talked about investors because a lot of his clients were real estate owners. And it just kind of the pivot thing for me was most of us have never been through a recession because we all started right after 2008.
Yeah.
And now it's been so long, like even old investors still weren't really in the market before '08. And so we think like, okay, what's my fallback plan? Oh, I know. I've got 40% equity. And if something goes wrong, I'll just sell the property. And that's like so naive because
That's what I think.
Yes, it's so naive because the reality is your assumption is in a recession, there are going to be buyers.
Yeah.
And it's a tough assumption. And so what I loved about this is it gives you the experience of what was happening in a recession to think through your own planning to make sure you're not believing something or I'm just going to refinance. And lots of people are kind of, depending on your pocket, you're experiencing many recessions depending on your asset class right now.
Mm-hmm.
They realize they cannot refinance. But luckily, the whole world isn't in a recession because you could maybe still raise money to help do a cash-in refinance. But if we were in a worldwide recession or a countrywide recession, there would be no investors to go and get the money from. So then what would you do? So it was just a really good way to fill a recession without experiencing a recession.
How would you set up your business if rents dropped by 40% and prices dropped and you couldn't sell?
So here are the two things that I've walked away with. One, bankruptcy is an option. And you just need to know that and realize ultimately it could end that way and not kid yourself and think you'll be smart enough to avoid it. Just know that. I feel like there's a piece for me at least in knowing that is an option. I'm not going to go kill myself if that happens because I've disgraced everyone. That's why it was created.
I have a buddy who's got an apartment deal and this is not me talking third person, it really is a buddy, but it's going really bad, really bad. He's probably going to lose it. He's probably going to lose all of investors' money. It just sucks. He won't go bankrupt necessarily, but he'll lose a lot of money on this deal. And I'm talking to him about it, and he was just like, yeah, the first 6 months were just misery and horribleness. And it's not even his fault. I mean, it's not his fault. He's doing everything right. Just cap rates went from 4 to 8. And it's like your value of your property is dropped in half, and you're talking about a $100 million property. So anyway, but I'm talking to him about, he took 6 months of just me hating myself and hating everything. And then finally I just realized the worst case scenario is bankruptcy. And yeah, some people lose their money and they're all accredited investors. And he's like, as soon as I felt that piece of like, oh, it's okay. He's like, now it's business. And there's something smart in that.
I had a friend tell me who owned restaurants and he just filed for bankruptcy at home. And he was like, I felt like a shark was holding me underwater. But as soon as I said bankruptcy is the answer, he tore my leg off, but I thought I'm going to live.
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah, there's a huge part of that where like acceptance is so freeing. Or even I was with a counselor once and we were talking about like just all of the bad case scenarios and just like, okay, like what if that did happen? Like, and just playing that out in your head and accepting, okay, well then I would do this, this, and this, and it's not the end of my life. It's like,
And I believe more people should think about that going into investing instead of waiting till the crisis comes. For one, investing is not for everyone, and bankruptcy was designed for people who are willing to take outsized risk for the betterment of the economy. So anyway, that's why. And the only other thing—
I never thought of that. That's a great point.
Yeah, that's why it's there. The problem is because they've allowed consumers to go into consumer debt and also file bankruptcy, that happens a lot more often, and that's the way people visualize it. But that's not where bankruptcy came from. And then the other thing is cash. There is no substitute for liquidity. So we think we don't need liquidity. We'd be better off in that deal because now we have a diversified portfolio and we have multiple different options. But when all of those options are off the table, nothing makes up for liquidity. So it's just, you got to have liquidity.
Yeah,
it's good.
Love that.
All right, book number 2.
Oh God, is that what we're talking about?
The first book.
Book number 2 is Who Not How. And that's because I totally buy into that concept. I'm really, really bad at executing it. And so then my third book is Buy Back Your Time because it's more about how to execute the who, not how, which I'm trying to get better at, but still am pretty challenged.
Well, Buy Back Your Time was Dan Martell, who we've had on the podcast twice. You guys can go listen to that if you want to. It's phenomenal. I don't remember what episode numbers, but just search it. Both were phenomenal. And Who Not How was Dan Sullivan and Ben Hardy. And Dr. Ben Hardy is scheduled to come on the podcast at some time in the next few months. So
awesome.
Good books. Hey, by the way, the other book that I've read recently that's kind of similar about recessions, The Road Less Stupid. Have you read that?
Have read it.
Okay,
yeah. I feel like this is similar in that way. He's like all the things we assume that we're going to be right that weren't. Yeah.
It's super good. Yeah, and I'd highly recommend. Yeah, check it out. And I'm gonna read that one now too. The Great Depression, a Diary, right?
A Diary by Benjamin Roth. Yeah.
Awesome.
Very cool.
All right. 2 pivot people who are 2 people that have changed the direction of your life.
Okay, so the first one, I hope he doesn't. I don't like to really give shout outs to people, so I totally hope he doesn't listen to this episode. I mean, if I'm not insulting you, that's a compliment.
Yeah.
No. So Randy Van's story, he is The first person that I went to work for, he was a co-founder in the assisted living place. He was a client of mine when I was the chief credit officer of a de novo startup bank. And then he was like, I don't know what you would do for us, but we'd like to hire you. And it was the first time I decided on a job based on proximity or education, not on pay. And to prove that, I took a 35% pay cut to leave the bank and go and work for them. Best decision I ever made. They were serial entrepreneurs, and I knew I could just learn a lot because I wanted to be an entrepreneur. I just was struggling to see the path. But the pivot moment came when I was putting together like my portfolio to get loans and stuff on the flipping. And I asked him to look over it with me to see if I'd thought of everything. And when we were done, he said, hey, if you raise money, I'd want to invest in this. And I was like, oh, hell no. And he was like, why not? I said, dude, I'm not going to take your money. What if I lose it? Like all the pressure. I don't want to take money from people that I know. And he goes, okay, so basically you're saying I'm not sophisticated or educated enough to know how to invest my money, that I need you to make that decision for me. And the point was he had confidence in me when I had no confidence in myself. So I was able to borrow that confidence, which was huge. And second, we spend a lot of time talking about who you take money from.
Yeah.
And, just because people have it doesn't mean you should take it. And just because they want to invest doesn't mean that your project is right for them to invest. So.
Is he still one of your 5 investors?
He is my largest single investor.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
I just did a class for the first deal program that I have for all the newbies that are getting into real estate. And I spent 30 minutes talking about that exact topic of like, just because you can raise money doesn't mean you should. And I was like, with great power comes great responsibility. I had a little, Spider-Man gif on there. And, but yeah, the fact is you can make on a piece of paper, you can make numbers look really, really good. And people are greedy and people are interested, and you can take advantage of people really easy. So it's like, don't take grandma's last 100,000, don't take money from people who can't afford to lose it, all that stuff. Like, because you could easily just go and rip off a lot of people. Just look at what Bernie Madoff did.
Yeah. And you may not even be ripping them off. You may be super hopeful.
Yeah.
But when you're in a really bad situation and you're taking people's money that they needed to eat or survive or pay bills, like it's only adding pressure on you.
Yeah.
So true.
What I've been seeing a lot with people that I know in the industry is they have deals going south, and instead of cutting ties, they go raise more money. Like there's a flipper I know right now that's in that exact. He's like, I can't finish the deals. I'm going to lose them. And they're already bad deals. And he's like, so I'm going to go raise more money to finish the deals. I'm like, so you're just going to lose more people's money.
Oh, yeah.
It's hard.
It's hard.
Yeah. Most people who create fraud or get involved in fraud didn't set out to do it.
Correct. Yeah.
It's and that's why I think you should think about bankruptcy before you ever get involved, so that when the hard times come, which they will, that's why they call it a cycle, that you're more mentally prepared to handle that and not do something stupid.
Yeah.
Well, Randy was your first guy. Who's second?
So the second one is going to be my daughter. We adopted her out of foster care at age 11. And even though she is totally awesome, it was really hard. And you know how they say like money just amplifies who you are. It doesn't change who you are. Doing really hard things also amplifies who you are. It doesn't change who you are. And so she had learned lots of skills that let her survive in her past, but we knew they let her survive. They were not going to let her thrive.
Yeah.
So we were going to have to break down 11 years of bad experiences and recreate new ones. And that's just hard. It doesn't, it's just hard. And I was not graceful at it. It definitely brought out like the worst in me, like selfish and just all the bad things just bubbled to the top. Thank God she is, she loved us deeply and super forgiving. And so I'm super thankful for that and for her, but she has definitely taught me to be a better person and to love deeper, where before I think I was just superficially who I am.
Yeah.
So super thankful for her.
How did that come about? Like, were you like, hey, we should do a foster somebody? Who's foster?
No. So my son was 8.
Okay.
I didn't know if I ever wanted kids. My husband said, if you, I'll quit my job if you just let us have a kid. And I'm like, okay, but this isn't going to screw my career up. Then I had him and I freaking loved it. And we got pregnant just like that, much to my husband's dismay. And then could never get pregnant again. And they couldn't figure out why. There was nothing obvious. We did several procedures. We did all that. And so we had just gotten comfortable with, we're only going to have one kid. It's been great. Life's good. We looked at adoption. My husband was pretty much against that. We looked at foster care, and those people are amazing. and we are not those people.
Yeah.
So we were fine. And then I was traveling to go out of town for work, and the news station was on, and they have a segment called Wednesday's Child, which is kind of like Adopt a Pet. It's really horrible when you say it out loud, but that's what it is. And this little girl was on there, and I was just like, oh my gosh, like just a calling to my heart. And so then I showed it to Sam. My husband was out of town. So I showed it to Sam on, like, I look it up online, the segment, and I showed it to him. And at the very end, she was like, every kid deserves a forever family. And he was like, Mom, why wouldn't we be her forever family? It's like, that's what I was thinking. So then we brought my husband in, and he was like, why do you want to do this? I'm like, I really don't know. Like, we had already decided not to, but I feel like it's a God thing. And so I call naively. And they're like, are you foster parents? We're like, no. And they're like, we can't tell you anything.
Yeah.
Like, we could give you no information. And so I said, okay, here's the deal. There are certain things we can't handle, like drug addiction, different things. And they were like, we think you should go and get licensed. So we did really fast, and took about 6 months when I say really fast. So I found out about her in December, and she came to live with us in June.
Wow.
And then how long did that process take between she came in to live with you and adoption?
We thought it was going to be foster and adopt. We were like, we didn't hit any of the marks. We have a pool that's not fenced. We have a pond that you can, all the things like that you have to go through to be a foster parent. We're not going to qualify for any of those. Yeah. The reality is, though, children over, I forget if it's 5 or 8, like the odds of getting them adopted goes almost to 0, right? And so they really wanted to have her placed. We didn't realize that at the time. They wanted us to take her as bad as we wanted her, but we thought they were trying to find ways not to let us adopt her. So we actually went straight to adopt. We didn't go foster to adopt. Really? It ended up, but we didn't know that until they came to the house to do the paperwork, because communication really isn't their skill. So we went straight to adoption, which was good because it was hard.
Speaking of foster, a lot of people know about the Beardy Brew coffee. You maybe have gotten a bag of it if you're in the Better Life Tribe or in First Deal. We send out bags, but a lot of people don't know that actually 100% of all the profits from that company go directly to a foster care nonprofit here on Maui. Awesome. We call Village of Hope. Village of Hope, shout out to you guys. You guys are amazing.
Oh,
all the money from that.
Great.
So go to beardybrew.com. Everybody watching the show right now, go to beardybrew.com and go get a subscription set up for Beardy Brew coffee, because every single solitary bag, all the profit, I don't take anything from that whatsoever, no salary, no nothing, all goes to the foster care kids. Village of Hope does they're just phenomenal. They do backpacks for kids and they help them. And they do night outs where they bring all the foster kids on the island to like a big one location to party all night and have fun. And all the parents get gift cards to go out and eat dinner. And it's such a good organization.
I was at a conference with him. Actually, it was Brody's conference up in Lahaina, and he was there, him and his wife. And they left to go foster. A kid had just gotten put in a foster camp. They literally left the conference to go pick him up. And they're amazing people.
Those people are amazing. That's how we knew it wasn't for us. Yes. We are not those amazing people.
Yeah, exactly. I'm like, I would love to foster, and I don't know if I'm in that spot right now. And I don't think I couldn't do it right now. Maybe someday. Instead, we're going to try to give them as much money as we can. The people who can handle it, let's just support them, because they're angels.
The hard thing is but the reintegration process, where like the hope is that the parents take them back.
You have to hope that they go back to that horrible family situation. I know.
But I would just remind myself, even if you have them for 6 months, that's 6 months that you could impact their life. It's
it would be so hard.
It would be so heartbreaking. It'd be so hard for them, for you, for kids.
Get connected. It's hard.
But for those who can do it, let's just support them.
Yes, totally.
Yeah. Beardybrew.com. Literally all the profits go there.
Love it. I didn't know that. I'm gonna
get some Beardy Brew, man. It's actually good coffee too. I found the best coffee roaster in the state. It's phenomenal coffee. And they do all of the work, and I just promote it. So beardybrew.com. All right, moving on. The pivot
I don't even know where we are.
I know. We should pivot quote. Pivot quote. What's that quote that you live by, or you kind of change the direction of your life?
I guess the one I tell myself a lot is be impatient with action and patient with results.
Ooh, I like that. I've never heard that. That's really good.
That's great.
Beautiful. Oh, that's so good.
I think Sean Puri said it. I want to give him a shout out. It's not my own. It's not. I'm not quoting myself.
You could. You could. A wise man once said.
Yeah.
All right.
Moving on to past, present, future. We're going to look at your past, present, and future.
Oh, really?
Yes.
Why is it called past, present, future?
I don't know. I've wondered that.
I've wondered that too.
But should use a descriptive term.
So what are we going to talk about in this section?
We're going to talk about what advice would you give to 20-year-old you?
Probably have some freaking confidence. Like men do it all the time and they're totally not qualified. Have some confidence in yourself. It'll be fine.
Yeah. Love that.
Next question. What is something you've done in the last year that's improved your life? What's a habit, trait, technique?
Dude, I
don't know,
forgot to prepare
action?
for this.
Yeah. What are you doing that's improving your life right now? That's giving you a better life.
Well, I guess I joined the Stupid Fitness Challenge.
You did do that. Yeah. How's that going for
That's
you?
stupid.
It's like having another real estate project because it's money motivated, which is why I do it. If you fail, you have to pay $100 fine. And that really motivates me, which means I will not fail. So it consumes a lot of my time. It made me realize you will not walk 10,000 steps in a day if you are not intentional.
Yep.
And you will not eat over 100 grams of protein a day if you
sure.
are not intentional. And so, but what it's done is make me really just focus on health for I think if we just do it for the 6 months, which is really long, I probably won't keep this intensity for 6 months, but it just makes you so aware of how you can easily fall into unhealthy, or you just been living unhealthy habits.
Yeah.
If it's not intentional, it's not happening.
I dropped out. Well, I never started. I did the first one.
You did the first challenge. Yeah.
Yeah.
We'll get you back.
Yes.
We're gonna do another one soon. So.
I don't know that I'll
We'll talk
re-up,
more about that.
but
All right. Love that.
Because we'll talk more about it. It's coming.
I'm in on that.
Yeah, you're gonna be in on this one. Legacy. Oh, sorry. Yeah, legacy. What do you want your legacy to be? I'm taking Cam's question,
It's
but
fine. No.
yeah, what do you want your kids to say about you when you die?
ooh, I think I want them to say she loved Jesus.
Okay.
She showed us how to dream really big, and she taught us to run really hard after our dreams. And being average is unacceptable.
Mm-hmm. How do you run really hard after your dreams, like within the business world or real estate world, and still be an attentive, present parent?
Oh, I'm not.
Oh,
An attentive present.
You forgot your kid's name.
Yeah,
Really.
exactly.
Yeah, right. So some people don't even know I have 2 kids. That's how bad it is. So our belief is maybe a little different. I don't even know if it evolved this way, but we chose when we got married, my husband's a working cowboy, we chose that way of life because we wanted the structure, the responsibility, the discipline. It's one thing to say, go clean your room. It's another thing to say the animals die. So if we don't feed them because we don't want to, then what are their options? So we chose that lifestyle. We also chose that our children were integrated into our lifestyle. We weren't living a life around them. So my kids were always with me. They've scraped probably lead paint. Don't worry. We told them not to eat it. And they've, done gardens, and just everywhere we go, we do everything as a family. So the attentiveness is we do lots of things together, and it doesn't really matter if you want to do it or not. That's life.
That's just life.
And that's how you run hard towards your dreams. And at the end of the day, it'll teach you things that you'll value. And so we don't really spend a lot of time about what are we going to do today to make Sam happy. And I know it's not for everybody, but that's kind of the philosophy we've taken.
No, I love that. I think one of the things that I've because I work a lot. Also, I feel like I'm an attentive father and present father, but I go back and forth when we've talked about this before, where it's like, do I want them to see us working really hard after our dreams and achieving some really cool things? Like, is that more important, or is it like sitting at home with them and watching YouTube? And I think it's probably working really hard, but I go back and forth all the time.
My whole thing is creating memories.
Yeah.
And so we get really caught up in, is this a memory that they're going to love? But I think at the end of the day, the kids just want time with you and memories.
Yeah.
They're not really worried about were we at the water park, were we traveling another country. They just want to be part of the life. They're contributing members of the family. And we believe we are creating lots of memories. They just aren't epic memories. Now, with that said, I want to be the epic grandma because I really wasn't the epic mom. I want to go on huge, awesome vacations and change my priority. But with my kids, we didn't do that.
Yeah, one of the things I just did the other day, because I do a lot of like coaching and Zoom calls, and Callie was there, and I just was like, hey, do you want to sit in on this with me? And she just sat there and watched me talk to people. And then at the end of the day, I always ask them, hey, what was your favorite part about the day? And Callie was like sitting there on your Zoom call, which was super cool because she still got to work with me. I still was able to work and still, but like she just wanted to be with me. It wasn't like I've got to create some fun thing. It's like she just wanted to sit there with me. It was awesome.
I feel like there's probably like a metaphor for Jesus in here that you could preach.
He just wants.
I just want to sit at Jesus' feet. Just listen. Let him work. Let him do his thing. I just want to sit with him.
Exactly what I was thinking.
Yes.
Let's wrap things up. Katie, what are you excited about? What's coming up in your life or business?
Well, we are now officially empty nesters. So we're fixing to get...
Because Sam lives with me now.
Yeah, exactly. Bought his first house. So we're fixing to get our parental report card. So I don't know if we're excited about it. We're nervous as hell about it. That both of our kids are going to be adults. And what does that look like? And my husband and I figuring out what it's like to, after 25 years of marriage, to just be a couple again. So I'm excited but nervous about it.
Yeah. There's that Esther Perel quote that I say all the time, but it's in your life you'll have 5 marriages. Hopefully they're all to the same person. Yeah. But I love the quote. It's like, because you have a new marriage coming.
Yep.
So
new phase. And so we're going to be intentional. I feel like at certain phases we really weren't, and we didn't really need to be. But I feel like we should be intentional this time because it's such a big change.
Love that. Awesome. Where can people find you?
Well, if you just want to follow along on the journey, I would love you if you would just go to Instagram at Katie Develops and follow me. But if you're interested in figuring out if redevelopment is right for you, I put together you are.
Yeah,
I've got a project for you.
Okay.
I put together like a 12-page PDF.
Did you really?
Is
Look
the
at you,
5
being prepared.
questions. Yes, the 5 questions you should ask yourself to save you time, money, and headache before you jump in. It's free. You can download it at katieneason.com/betterlife.
Ooh.
And with your rock star group, I'm sure it will be in the show notes.
It will be in the show notes.
Katie
Neason, Neason.
Yep, KatieNeason at .com/betterlife.
/betterlife. You're lucky you got the katieneason.com. I can't get brandonturner.com. Hey, if anybody wants to help me out and get brandonturner.com, the guys just, I don't know. I guess I haven't asked them in 20 years.
Turns out there's only 2 Katie Neasons out there, and the other one's a little behind me. So I'm able to trump her.
Perfect. Katie Neason, this has been amazing. Thank you so much. You're awesome. And have fun snoobing today.
Snoobing.
Yep, going snoobing.
Going snoobing. Is that a thing? Is that a verb? Snoobing?
Anything as long as you do I-N apostrophe can be a verb.
Very Texan of you.
Yes.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Boom.
And that, my friends, is the show. Thank you for tuning in. And hey, before you go, if you enjoyed this episode or if you just enjoy the show in general, please consider leaving us a rating and review wherever you listen to podcasts. We really do value your feedback, and we read the comments. We make future decisions about topics and guests and everything else. Plus, it helps us reach more people, and the more reviews we get, the more people hear it and watch the show and share it, and it's awesome. Last but not least, please head over to social media. Consider befriending me, following me, subscribing to all that stuff at Better Life and my personal page at Beardy Brandon, especially over on Instagram, YouTube, and really everywhere else. So thank you again for listening. I'm honored that you would bring me along on your journey toward building wealth through real estate investing without losing your soul. Now, this show is about living a better life, but if you want my opinion on what it takes to live the best life ever, just go to abetterlife.com/best life to hear some of my views on life and spirituality. I think you'll like it. abetterlife.com/best life. With that said, thanks for listening to the show. We'll see you next week.